Okay, here we go. It's Thursday again. Baton Talk. Thank you for joining and for coming in today. I am trying to get my guests in today, so forgive me for 1 second as I look away. Um, there we go. Great. So they should be joining anytime soon. Um, let's see here. Okay. So, as usual, we try to start our baton talk with grounding ourselves. Um, because, you do too much. And every day we're in our heads, we're thinking and being intelligent and coming up with profound things to say and working and producing. And it's just a non-stop stream of thoughts. So, before we get into another conversation, before we start another moment, I always want to start with being present, right? Let's be present with each other. I can't see you, but I see numbers, so I know somebody's there. Hi, Robin. And yes, please drop in a little hi in there. Um, if something speaks to you as we have this conversation, drop it in the comment for those who come on after. And if you have a question, you can request to come on. I already put the um, link in the chat room. It's going to be that kind of day where just words are not coming to me. So bear with me. But we're here, we're doing it. So let's start with just being present with the moment. And we'll just do a quick grounding, just coming into our bodies, forgetting all the thoughts, the to do lists, the things you forgot to do. They will be there when this is done, I promise. And they'll be there till the day we die, unfortunately. So let's try to be where we are. And we'll start that by just feeling where you're sitting. Feel your body and your back against the chair, the bed, your feet on the ground. Just take a moment. Either you can touch your heart, feel it beating. That means you're alive. That means you still have a purpose. That means there's blood and a heartbeat going through your body. You still have more to do for yourself and for others. So take this time and take a deep breath with me. And that is for me as much as it is for you, because we carry one thing from one space and that energy comes into another space. And when we're not careful, depending on where we're coming in from, it's just never a good thing to carry things over, because that's when all the troubles begin and we have no idea why and how. So, thank you for breathing with me and for being here, taking time out on your Thursday for another week of Baton Talk. We took time off last week. Sorry for those of you who didn't get the memo. I tried to put on Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp. So I apologize if you didn't get it in advance. But it was the holiday weekend. I knew people were traveling. Even with COVID, people still need to feel like life is still moving on and it's normal. So we canceled for that reason. And as you know, here at Baton Talk, we're just trying to analyze the things that have been handed to us, understand why things are the way they are, and then let go of the things that no longer serve us. So we're learning together, we're growing together, healing together, so that if we heal ourselves, we will not have to pass it on, and our children will not have to heal from the same things that we created, right? Um, and so I've come up with this. Somebody was asking me about how I'm why I'm doing the baton talk. And my why is because I am the work. I believe I have to do the work in order to help others do the work. And so we're all doing it together. That way I stay accountable, because you can't preach, so to speak, in public things you're not practicing yourself. So everything I'm learning about and I'm bringing to you, those are things that are speaking to me, or things I'm struggling with, or things I'm unlearning, right? So today, the biggest thing that we all experience over and over is called imposter syndrome. And it wasn't always called that. So from day one, everybody kind of had this feeling where you are on a stage or in a classroom or in a boardroom, and you feel like you don't belong. And there's always this voice that says, okay, maybe, um, they're doing me a favor, or they needed one more woman in this boardroom, or they needed a black person to make up their color, their diversity. Whatever the reasons are, we all come up with reasons to feel like we are not, we don't deserve to be where we are. And I was reading, oh, what book was I reading this week that says, what would you do if you felt worthy of that thing, right? And so a lot of times we hesitate or question ourselves, not because we don't think we can, but because maybe we feel we're not worthy. Um, and with imposter syndrome, it knows no color, it knows no gender or experience. People from Maya Angelou talked about this after writing 10 books. And she was saying on her 11th book, she said, oh, maybe now people will figure it out. People are going to know that I'm a fraud, or they're going to know that um, all these other 10 books that I just wrote that they didn't, why would they read this, right? Or speakers and who always say, why would anybody pay for my service when they're selling? And a lot of us, we know engage in that talk. When somebody says, what do you do? Wow, can you do that for me? And you almost want to offer your services for free because you don't think you're good enough to charge for what you do. So then it was this Pauline and what's her name? Rose. It was Pauline Rose Clance and her colleague who came up after doing research with a lot of undergrads. They realized there is something here. And so they were the first people to coin the term imposter syndrome. And since then, people have all been going, understanding this. And it turns out everyone is experiencing the same exact thing, but only nobody's talking about it. And that's where that whole thing came about. That is, that term is pluralistic ignorance, where we are all experiencing something, but everybody wants to pretend they got it, and as a result, you all deal with it by yourselves. So on this Baton Talk this week, I said I had had a really good session with Judy in Agape on IPU, and IPU um, is a podcast for those of you who don't know what it is, and that's for immigrants in pursuit of umunezero. Umunezero is happiness in Kinyarwanda. So they have interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of immigrants who came and forged their own path for the first time. And so they've heard this over and over and over. They've experienced it themselves. I've experienced it myself. And if you're out there and you have too, um, please put a comment in there of either how you have or what do you do. So I'm going to have Judy and Agape join me on this conversation. We're going to talk about that, and then we'll cross over at around at 8 and go to Instagram for Q&A. So hopefully you join us there too. So please help me welcome Judy and Agape to welcome.
Hello,
Hi.
hello. Thank you for having
Hello.
us.
I like that shirt.
Thank you,
Ooh, and
thank
the
you.
earrings. I
Oh,
see you
thank
all.
you.
How's our sound? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah. Can it be higher?
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Are y'all wearing one each?
Is that better? Yeah. We're being ghetto and sharing
She wanted
AirPods.
Oh, okay. I love it. All right, getting creative. I can hear
Is the
you.
sound okay?
Can people hear them okay? If somebody could just let us know in the comments if their sound is okay, that would be really helpful. I hear you. It's a little on the low side, but if they can hear us, that's good. Okay, so I'll just let you each take a moment to introduce yourselves and what IPU is.
ladies first.
Oh, such a gentleman. I'm Judy, aka J Tessie, and I am one of the IPU hosts. Um, yeah, I we started IPU in 2017. I can't believe it's still going on because that was, we dealt with imposter syndrome with that whole thing in itself, and we'll get into that later. And I'm just excited to be here with my siblings and talking about our experiences.
My name's Agape, also a co-host of IPU. I'm new this season. I just started season 4. Turns out it's the best season so far. I don't know if there's a correlation or not.
Right.
I'm not one to say. But as you can see, I haven't dealt with imposter syndrome too much. I always have an overinflated sense of self, my family says. But I understand the thing, and it's a very interesting topic. And I'm excited to be here and learn as well as share what I think I know.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. And so, one thing I do want to set straight about imposter syndrome, even though they call it syndrome, it is not a disorder. So, this is not a mental health issue. It can be correlated to self esteem, to other things that go on. It is also very prevalent in marginalized groups. So, of course, as you, or if you're Black, if you're a woman, if you're LGBTQ, all the groups that have been told over and over and over that you're not good enough, they've seen research. So there've been studies, multiple studies that are kind of in the mental health, but as it stands, it is not a disorder. So I want to put that out there. And most of us experience this. So Judy and Agape, after all these years, you have interviewed a lot of people who have taken roads that are less traveled, who have challenged the status quo, be it in their own families, be it culturally, be it across the globe. Where do you find this? What have they shared with you when it comes to imposter syndrome?
Oh my God. I think that's the biggest challenge that they have because one, they don't have somebody who's walked in that path, or they don't have very many people that they can look up to when they're facing challenges to, say, hey, how did you deal with this when this happened? So they're creating the path for others. And then not only that, they're usually, the only Black person in that genre, or the only African. Um, stuff like that. And one gift that really stuck with me. Her name is Kimmy. She's really funny. She's an actress, a writer. She's done great things. She's written short films on Hulu. She was on that show on Apple TV, Little America. So she's done stuff that's out there. It's not like, oh, I'm an aspiring actress and I'm struggling, whatever. She has work to show for it. But she told me that she struggles with imposter syndrome a lot, and what she had to do, she ended up naming her imposter syndrome. She calls her Izzy. So she's like, I always hear Izzy, and whenever I know that she's making an appearance, I always have to. She's like, I welcome her. I acknowledge that she's in my house, or she pretends like this is her house, and this is like that friend that you hate but you can't get rid of. Like those friends that are just mean, but you've known them for so long. So it's like, we grew up together. I can't get rid of her, but I can't stand her. So that's how she treats her. She's like, as soon as Izzy comes knocking, I'm like, hey, Izzy girl, what's up? Have a seat. I see you, but I'm gonna continue to do what I'm doing. And that's when she said that, I was like, oh my God, like that works. Actually, I had to start naming my imposter syndrome as well. It helped me out a lot. So that's one way that she deals with it.
Yes,
And
that's a really good point. I'm sorry, Agape, I'll correct you. I sounds like Kimmy has gotten either some experience or some therapy along the way, because that's one of the things we use even with clients who have anxiety. And we know that what you resist persists. So when you resist something, it just will keep coming. And that voice, acknowledgement, acceptance, calms her down, calms easy down. And most people have a name. I had a client whose first name that came to mind was her mother-in-law. It's like, oh, I call my voice this name. So that is the one person who's always putting you down. And so you can't stay away, but you choose. You can choose to acknowledge, accept, then they calm down and you can move
Hmm.
on. So I like that. Yes, Agape, sorry, go ahead.
no, for me, I was just gonna say that how ubiquitous it is across all types of careers, success levels, and it doesn't matter. It's not about accomplishment, and it's not about confident people, because there's even people that on the outside you see and they have it all together and they believe in themselves, but they even talk about as they were doing it, like they all question themselves. So I think normalizing it and realizing it's not just you feeling that way, just kind of like for me, I tie it to becoming an adult. I work because when you're a little kid, you think there's a certain point you reach, and then, oh, I'm an adult now. I have my life together. But the older you get, the more you realize nobody really knows what they're doing. We're just figuring it out along the way. And you're like, oh, I used to think this. People have everything, they know what they're doing, but that's just there's no point where it goes from childhood to adulthood. You just get more responsibility as it goes on, and I believe that's what like imposter syndrome kind of is, and realizing, oh, nobody knows for sure, we're all just figuring it out. So that's what I've learned from it, that it's not um, doesn't rely on any other type of accomplishments or anything like that, or career wise. It's ubiquitous.
Exactly. I think it was Oprah sharing how she was invited to speak at Harvard and she freaked out. She's like, I don't
Hmm.
have those kind of degrees. I didn't go to an Ivy League. And it's freaking Oprah. Everybody will kill to just have her say their name. Like
Right.
everybody looks up to, she's the epitome of success. And everyone has that one thing, that one person that they feel they're better than. And I think for me, that's the core of imposter syndrome, is always looking at others' opinion of you or comparing. That's the evil that gets us all, right? It's always like, oh, that person is smarter than I. What could I possibly say after they
Hmm.
speak? How can I be on this panel after they did this? Um, and I remember getting this invitation. Well, first I thought they were confused that maybe they ended up inviting me, but they meant to invite somebody else. And then I didn't hear, then I didn't hear from them for like a couple of months, and the date was coming up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't even share with anyone that that was an opportunity coming, because I'm like, there's no way they wanted me. And then I didn't hear from them, and I was like, yeah, I knew it. It wasn't real. They came back and they followed up and they gave me details. I'm like, what? And so I opened up to her, coming back to naming it. And I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I don't belong. I mean, like I don't understand why. And she's like, trust me, everybody who's coming feels exactly like you feel. So just
Mm,
pretend like you belong because they are all doing the same thing. And that's
yeah.
what put me at ease. And once I got there, literally everyone was like, wow, I can't believe we're here. And everyone is whispering, right? So we're
Yeah.
all doing the same thing, but everybody thinks that the only ones, like everybody else, got it together. So when we let other
Hmm.
people's opinions of the situation themselves inform how, if whether or not we belong, and then there's that whole unlearning. So with that, how have you guys experienced this in your own lives?
Do you want to
Yeah.
go first?
Yeah, sure. So for me, like what you said is faking it. So like I said earlier, I've always had a overinflated sense of self. So like I I always feel like I belong in places even I know I shouldn't belong. So like I've had, and it's just kind of faking it and knowing that nobody really has it together has allowed me to be like, okay, I just do my best, and then like no, what I really realized is public speaking. I remember I took a public speaking class, and I used to get nervous and stuff. And then I remember I thought about how nobody knows what's going on in here. It's only you. So like we view the world as if everybody can see our thoughts or see how we're. So like if you just pretend you're confident, you will feel confident. And I remember I had this speech I really had not prepared for in class one time, and then I was just like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go up there, pretend like I know what I'm doing, and kill it. And I ended up getting a really good grade on it. Like this was early in my high school career. Like I I forgot about the project, and I just copied people's notes and then just like went up there and winged it, and I ended up getting a really good grade off of just false confidence that I made myself feel. And from that point forward, I realized as long as it's all internal, like the external world will reflect the internal world. So if you just fake it, and no matter how you actually feel, just like no, tell yourself this and go out and act that way, people will perceive you in that manner, regardless of your
Inner feelings.
accolades or your how you truly feel. It's all the front you put on, and you realize most things in life. Everybody was wearing a mask, so you get to choose which mask to wear. So instead of wearing the imposter syndrome mask, wear the I'm confident I got this mask, even if you don't. Eventually, you will.
So
Yeah.
you're basically saying you haven't experienced.
No, like I shared this story with Tabby. Like at my last job, I got really lucky and got this great opportunity to work in the corporate world, and I got some promotions and things like that, and I took over a role where I was in charge of the inventory for the whole company. And there'll be meetings we're having, and it's me in my role, and then like it's the CEO, the CFO, and then these other big wigs coming in making decisions on how we're going to implement things in software, and they needed my opinions. And I remember like I'd sit back sometimes, like I'll be sitting in the board meeting. So a lot of times I would take the head of the table at these meetings. Like, as crazy as that sounds, and they knew that that was like, in the CEO be to my right, and like I just be there, and they look to, and I in my head I'd be like, yo, this is crazy. Why am I in this meeting right now? I don't have similar qualifications. I don't have. But then I was like, I know, like I feel like what I have to add has value, so I would still just share and talk, and then it'd be accepted, and and yeah, like it didn't.
No, but well, so what I'm hearing is you don't have imposter syndrome, but oh, you don't experience that. But what I got out of that, those are things, those are strategies that we actually give clients that are legit. And research backs that what you portray on the outside turns into your internal experience. So even when you're really mad and you put a smile on, eventually your brain internalizes happiness. So sometimes acting the way you want to feel can change how you
Mm-hmm.
feel. And so that's what
Exactly.
you're really saying.
Yeah.
So you're ahead of the game. We all need to learn more of be like Agape. What would Agape do? Our positive
No.
guru here. All right, Judy.
Fake it
How
till you
about
make
you?
it, basically. That's what you do.
Simple.
For me, I think I deal with it a lot just because I having anxiety and imposter syndrome is just a recipe for disaster, right? But the one moment that stands out the most, I remember my last job before I moved to Canada. It was a job in HR. I did not have any background in HR at all. I didn't study for it. I had no experience, nothing. I saw this job. It sounded great. I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply for it. Chances are you're not going to get it, but why not? The worst that they can do is say no. So I applied for it. And strangely enough, they called me for a phone interview. So I was like, okay, they must have seen something that they like on the resume. I spoke with the person that interviewed me for the job. We hit it off. It was like I was talking to a friend, so it was great. She's like, okay, I have a few more people to interview. I'll call you. We'll let you know if you're moving on to the next step. Great. A week later, they reached out for a face-to-face interview, and I was like, oh, okay. And now, really, the imposter syndrome is kicking in, right? She's like, I can just hear her like, girl, what? I mean, you faked it on the phone. They couldn't see you. What are you gonna do in real life? What are you gonna say? Like, you have no experience. This job, like, they were paying way more than I was making at the time. I was like, oh, why did you even do this? Now I'm regretting even like the little confidence that I had in myself when I applied for the job initially. I'm like, oh, I should have just never applied for this. Now you're gonna look stupid. Da 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 da. They're gonna figure you out. But I was like, listen, you have to have the conversation with your imposter syndrome. I'm like, listen, the
What's
fact that
your
they're calling me for an interview.
What's her name? What's your imposter's name?
I haven't found a name that really sticks. Like for some reason, I keep thinking about this Hispanic name. Like, I don't understand why she's Spanish. I don't know, but so I'm trying to figure out a name that works. But anyway,
We'll move past that.
We're gonna ask. You might have to delete this after.
no, like it's just the strangest thing. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so they called me for the the face-to-face interview. So I have a conversation with her, and I'm like, listen, chick, like, you need to be quiet. There's a reason why they called me back. So I'm going to roll with that reason, forget you. So I go into the interview, there's three people, and I was being interviewed by the CFO of the company, who would be my manager, and then another person that was in my role, but she had been with the company for like 19 years or something like that. So they really trusted her. I walk in and I'm like, oh my God, what is about to happen right now? And of course, I'm the only black person. And I was the only black person I saw like the whole time. When you go in the waiting area, like nobody looked like me. So I was like, okay, either they just want some color around here or, maybe I am qualified for this job. I don't know. So I go in, I have a little pep talk with myself and, luckily they didn't even ask me about the job itself. They were just getting to know me as a person. We were just having a conversation. It was fine. They're like, okay, we'll let you know either way. We have a few more people to interview. Um, a week went by, like, of course, after the interview, I did my due diligence. I emailed, thanked them, da 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 da, right? So I was like, well, what's the, I should know by at least the latest 2 weeks. Week went by, nothing. 2 weeks, nothing. So I'm like, okay, I definitely didn't get the job. It is what it is. I'm like, but why haven't they called me or said something or emailed, sent a letter, for God's sake? So I called the lady, and her voicemail said that she's been out of the office for like 2 weeks. The first week she was sick, and then it was a Catholic organization, so they were closed for the whole week of Christmas. It was during December. So I was like, oh my God, she hasn't been in the office. That's why I haven't heard from her. So I gained a little hope. And then she returned in the office. The whole week went by, and I was like, I definitely didn't get the job. And then she calls me, like, I think the fourth week where I was like, oh, I didn't get it, So she calls, she's like, oh my God, Judy, I'm so sorry to hear. I'm so sorry it took this long. I've been under the weather, da 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 da. And when I got back, I was swamped. But you got the job. And I was like, wait, what? And she's like, yeah, you got the job. So, how soon can you start? And da 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 da. I was like, oh my God, as soon as possible, so I couldn't believe it. So now you get from how am I going to make it through the interview? Now you get the job, and then she comes back, right? She's like, oh, you fooled them, the first time, the second time, I ain't gonna fool them now that you're working. Like, what are you going to do? And I remember the first day of my job, I sat with my manager for like an hour. She was just giving me an overview of like my day-to-day, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if she sensed it or maybe she's experienced it herself at some point, but she was Puerto Rican. So, she considered herself a minority. Well, she is a minority. But, when you look at
Sorry to interrupt. They're saying they can't hear you so well. Can you either adjust or I don't know how.
Can you hear me okay?
Turn up the volume. I think Robin was saying they couldn't hear you very well. I don't know if you can turn up the volume or something. Yeah, sorry.
How about now?
Yeah.
I could hear you. I don't know everybody else. And
Is that better? Can somebody let us know?
Okay. I had the heater going, so maybe that would be better too.
Maybe turn up.
All right. So you start the job.
So I started the job, and on my 101 with my boss, she looked at me and she was like, Judy, I need to let you know something. Don't you ever, I don't care if it's this job or if it's another job that you're going to move on or, wherever you end up in life, don't you ever feel like you don't belong. And don't you ever allow anybody to make you feel like you don't belong. She's like, we've interviewed over 30 people for this position. And I know your concern was you didn't have any experience, but the reason why we picked you is because you are more than able to do this job and excel at it. So, she's like, don't think that the company's out here feeling sorry for you. Nobody's going to be throwing up money at you, We hired you because we can see potential in you and we know that you can do this job. So whenever you're walking this hall, whenever you're sitting in your cubicle, whenever you're attending a meeting with somebody, know that you belong in that room. And I was like, oh my God, are you my angel? Like, because in my head, I was like, she could tell. And maybe like my energy or whatever. But ever since then, I always go back to her words. It's like the reason you're in that room is because you belong exactly there. Yep.
Wow. Yes. And that inner dialogue shows up outwardly. Even when the minute you don't think you belong, you walk a certain way that says, you're doing me a favor for being in this job. And yes, please, I'm so sorry. You will not challenge people. You will not ask for what you deserve. You'll not. It affects how you show up. And people can read that even without knowing what you're feeling. Even with all the A's, if you're not confident, somebody with C's will take your job. Why do we have a president that we have? He's making people think that he can do this, and all evidence
Very
shows
confident.
Cannot. So if there's nothing we can learn from this man, we can learn about being an imposter without imposter syndrome.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the opposite.
Seriously. Oh my God. Yes. So wow, that is absolutely incredible because I just had the same experience, and I mean it goes with us in every space, and you just have to be aware. I think it was LeBron who says he uses his name and talks about himself in the third person when he is just kind of, I mean, he's freaking king of whatever basketball. Is that what they call him? He's the king. What,
King James. King James. Yes.
that's the actual name. I don't know. Or they just say King James because they're so good.
His name's LeBron James, then just
Yeah,
King
he's the
James, the
king.
nickname.
Oh,
King
okay.
of whatever. Okay. So he actually has a title to match his achievements. He has everything that you need to know he's good at stuff. So when people who are known on a global level for what they're good at, like that's the only thing that put him on the map. And he says that every time he feels like, okay, this is it. I've made it this far now. Rap. So he was saying how he talks to himself in third person, and he will the way you would introduce somebody who where like let's say it's a gathering and you say, okay, here we have Judy, she has this accomplished this, so he will start reminding himself in the third person, like he has this ring and he won these games and this many and he broke this record. LeBron James has never been this, over and over and over, until he starts saying, wow, I that guy is great. And that personal thing. So when we're talking about other people, we're more likely to give them the credit they deserve, and we walk
Hmm.
in spaces thinking, well, they're here, so they deserve it. But I'm here because it's a chance. As it comes right back to that initial conversation we had on self-esteem, and I think Agape, we had
Hmm.
this conversation: where does imposter syndrome start and self-esteem begins, and
Hmm.
what are the differences? But it's so intertwined, and it comes down to how we speak to ourselves. That internal dialogue is everything. You have to, and Judy, you mentioned this, and we all had been reading and following Eckhart Tolle's work on I'm talking to myself. There is the I and there's a self having a
Yeah.
Mhm.
conversation. So when you become the awareness of just that conversation and not internalize your inner dialogue to be who you are,
You. Yeah.
that changes everything. And that's why that trick of using a name helps you separate yourself from your thoughts.
Exactly.
They're just thoughts. So when you start thinking because I'm thinking it, it must be true. Mm-mm. It's coming from something else, messages, all of that. So what do you think, or for you, because Agape doesn't have this problem, I'll ask you, or for people you've seen who have this problem, Agape, where do you see this coming from? Um, or what messages have you received personally or society, whatever, where that contributes to imposter syndrome for you or for the people you've
So,
interviewed? So it doesn't have to be personal.
so for me, I believe it comes from, again, like your core beliefs and then your unconscious beliefs about yourself. So you you can say one thing on the top of like, oh, I'm confident about myself, but your core belief based on something you're not aware of, you carry it within you, and like you're saying, it becomes part of your body language. So like on the surface, I like this, but internally you don't feel like you're worthy of a certain thing. So I think it's childhood belief systems that were put onto you by others that you internalized without, and you never confronted or faced up to, and then your unconscious beliefs end up running your life without you being aware of it. So it's being aware of of your core beliefs about yourself and not just what you say to yourself. So you're not, like what you're saying, you're not your thoughts, but then there's also a belief system within that you may not be aware of because you don't want to face it, because that would make you believe, like, consciously you don't want to face it because you're like, oh no, I don't think like that about myself, but really you do, and you're just not trying to see it. So your unconscious beliefs and your belief system that were implanted into you as a child growing up, I think is where it really stems from.
Yes. And to add to that, or to get that point even further, your core belief informs your thoughts, right? So
Yes.
you might experience the same thing. So me and Judy take a test and we both fail. And Judy might have that experience and say, I failed this test because I didn't study. I'm going to study harder next time and do better. Because her core
Mhm.
belief is that she is smart, she is worthy, but this test specifically didn't work out. Then, if my core belief, in all of us, mostly if we're not doing the work, which is why we are the work,
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
don't know what our core beliefs are. We just see it manifesting through our behaviors in our interpretation of our experiences. So same experience, then I could come away with, I'm a failure. I knew it. I'll never mount up to anything. I couldn't even do this stupid test. Why do I bother? And that turns
Mhm.
into um, thoughts of I'm unworthy, I'm not smart enough, I'm not this enough, then that turns into behavior of feelings of depression or sadness. And that turns
Mhm.
into, okay, I'm just going to go eat a bucket of ice cream and watch Netflix. Then I'm not going to study and take another test and fail again. And the cycle
Mhm.
continues. And that's how we
And
get
you're
stuck.
validating your
Your
And then we're
beliefs.
beliefs in
Yeah.
validating our own maladaptive thought patterns. Then Judy, who says, I didn't study, I didn't prepare well, I failed this test, she's going to feel sad for a minute, but it's not going to determine her next behavior is probably going to be, let me go to the library and study harder for the next test. Because
Hmm.
this is why this test failed. It's not because there's something missing within me. And so
Mhm.
that's why core beliefs are so important. We have to understand, what have we learned about ourselves, and how does that inform our thoughts? Because your thoughts become your habits and behaviors, and that becomes your life. So with
Yep.
each day, you have to look into that. Yeah, back to you.
And I wanted to ask you before I talk about before I answer your question. Um, ca- imposter syndrome can manifest in people's lives differently, right? Do you think that self sabotage and imposter syndrome can
Go hand in hand and work together.
yeah, are related in some ways? Because I've seen people who are like, oh, because they don't want to believe. Okay, how can I put this? They don't want to I guess confirm that they don't belong in a room or they don't belong at this job or don't belong in this school, so they don't work as hard. Um, that way they don't have that confirmation of like, well, I'll never know if I'm really not that good. I'm just not gonna apply myself to
Yeah.
to see my full potential. Is
Yes.
that part of the imposter syndrome, you think?
It can be. So the imposter syndrome itself is that sense of I don't belong, that lack of confidence in a specific situation, right?
Hmm.
And so how you react or respond to it then determines, or your core beliefs determine how you respond to this imposter syndrome, so to speak, if that makes sense. So people who feel it and act anyway, then there are people who say, I won't even try, because back to that core belief, I'm a failure anyway, I'm not enough. Why bother? So when I feel like, I think we talked about this on the podcast when I said, you asked me how I experienced this, and I said, I'll go ahead and do it anyway, but I'm not going to watch it. It's like if I give a
Mm.
speech, I'm not going to watch any of my speeches. I've not watched a single YouTube video I've done here because um, I pushed through that piece and then put some things in place that will not stop me from doing what I know I need to do, if that makes sense. And so the growth mindset piece, or actually, one of the advices or ways you can beat this is practice failure.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes, if you put yourself in places where you fail, or where you go through life with that sense of curiosity, not the sense of win or fail mentality, lose or win, more so, then you're thinking, okay, if I do this and it doesn't work out, now I know. I try
Hmm.
again. It's just curious. I'm curious
Yeah.
if this whole podcast thing works. Will people listen? If they do, perfect. It works. It confirms. If they don't, okay, they don't like this idea. What can I change? or maybe podcasts are not for whatever. So that changes. So when you, this one guy literally went on a journey of failure, of rejection. That was his biggest fear. So he started asking for things he knows he can't get on purpose, because
Wow.
it's controlled fear. And fear is what stops us from, it's what really pulls us from the imposter syndrome, how you respond to it. Because one person will say, I'm not going to try, so I don't have to face that fear of rejection, or so I'll never know. And that stops you from living your fullest life. And so he would go on the streets and come up to strangers. Hey, can I have $100? And of course, like, no. Like, okay. And he'll go to the next one. Hey, can I have $100? Over and over until rejection was not a thing. And he's like, okay, people say no, you move on. But when you stay stuck in that place, you don't move forward. And then when it's something important, you have to realize some people have that luxury of giving up. And when you are pursuing your dream, your purpose, your calling, it was that Queen of Katwe when the kids were going head to head with chess, and somebody said, he gave him that little example of the cat chasing a mouse, and said and the mouse kept running and the cat never caught it. So the reason is not because the mouse is faster, it's because the cat is just running for lunch and the mouse is running for its life. So when you're running for your life, fear, imposter syndrome, when that's something that purpose is calling you, you're running for your life. You do whatever it takes to beat it and get through it. Agape had something to say.
Yeah, like to add on to that story, that guy with the rejection. Another thing he learned is that some people said yes to many things he did not believe they would say yes to. So he found like just by asking, like asking people to come over for lunch or to buy his lunch or for pairs of shoes, and they'd say yes to that. So it really surprised them how not only like there's the fear of rejection taken away, but it also showed him that you can get a lot more in life by just asking. So like that's another point to it.
And I feel like I've witnessed that with
Oh
you,
yeah, I
where
utilize that.
this guy goes around asking for discounts for no reason. Like we literally went to McDonald's and
McDonald's?
McDonald's.
Need a
Chipotle
It was
discount
everywhere.
for
in
a dollar
drive
for
through.
you.
Exactly. First of all, the meal was like less than $10. And then he goes in, so we get into the drive through and he's like, hey, so what about that discount? And I was looking at him like, what discount? And the guy's like, what discount? I was like, you know that 10%. And the guy was like, all right. And I was like, wait, why did he just give me that? It's like, you just gotta ask. And yeah.
I did that. I remember I do that sometimes just for I used to. I haven't done that in a while actually. Thanks for reminding me. I got Chipotle one time and then the guy was like, "Oh, I can't give you a discount, but I'll give you free chips and guac." I was like, "Okay." So you again, you
There
don't be
you
afraid to
go.
ask. Like even asking outlandish things, you
We
never
don't know
know.
until we ask. So maybe that will be our challenge for all of us, all the listeners. Let's step out this week and ask.
Just start
Just
asking.
ask.
Just ask. You'll be
It's a
surprised.
10%
Love it.
discount.
And
Universe likes saying yes.
let's come back here and discuss who asked for what and what did you get that surprised you. Seriously, guys, that would be so. I'm doing it. I don't know.
Actually, even like
He's
COVID.
really
yeah,
gonna
you're
do
gonna do
it.
it.
She's
We're
like,
gonna hold.
I'm doing
Ah,
it.
I was like, well, am I? No,
No.
but I mean,
Are you committing to doing it? Let's do it.
it is COVID. I am going to do it. And I remember Robin is on here. I was talking to Sharita, and I'm talking about these people had invited me to speak at a seminar, and I'm thinking, and they assumed it's free. They asked like it's free, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, and I agreed, and we put everything in place. And then I'm talking to this agent lady. I think I might have shared this story already here, so y'all gonna just know all my stories over and over. And I asked her if she could have conversations with the big deal conferences who ask for me to speak, and then I can handle smaller ones, which usually by handle I mean I'll just take whatever they give me. And so yeah, like yeah, because the other ones are not gonna be worth your time. And she goes, if they're not worth my time, why are they worth yours? And that stayed with me even to this day. So like now I push myself to ask. Um, Actually, now I remember when Chris was here, he talked about how he asked for
Mhm.
what's your budget. I never asked for that. I'm just like, oh, great. Yeah, that sounds good. And then I'm waiting and hoping they offer. So that's how I'm going to push myself to ask. what
Boom.
you pay me. All right, y'all keep me accountable, and
I
I look
got
forward to
you.
hearing what you guys ask for. Yeah, we'll see how that goes in COVID. Can I have your mask?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, your hand
Oh
sanitizer and your
Yeah,
toilet
people
paper.
do that.
That'll be a big ask right now. Anybody want to give me that Clorox wipes?
Yeah.
Anybody on
Can
this?
you can I
they
have
don't
those?
have any. Like they're still out.
Those are
They're
gone.
limited.
Yeah. So, my next question, which is one of the big Baton Talk questions, is what do you need to unlearn that contributes to imposter syndrome? Oh, people should unlearn, maybe not you.
Oh, I like kind of go off on that. It was I had a question for you. You could help us with like because I was in my research for this. Sorry, maybe this is off, but it's kind of tied in. I'll just say that a way to fight imposter syndrome is learning to internalize accomplishment. So like that answers your question. That's what we need to learn, how to internalize accomplishment instead of like, yeah, we did these things, but that's not me, as opposed to, and instead of like, I was able to accomplish these things. So, from your perspective of, I mean, from your experience and expertise, what are ways to internalize accomplishment? Because I think that's what people need to learn to fight that.
Mm. What ways can we internalize accomplishments? I
Kind
think,
of like how LeBron was saying, he just speaks it out loud to himself.
yeah, and that's one way. I think I even still have this issue. We have a hard time talking ourselves up. And this is a cultural thing, it's a gender thing because it feels
I was gonna
like
say
you're
that.
bragging, right?
Yeah.
And I even caught that when I was saying, oh, and I got this invitation, I couldn't say where because I was like, that'll be a brag. Like, why are you saying why
So
you got
wait,
invited?
wait. So is that, I mean, I know there's a thin line between bragging and you just saying what you've accomplished. What is that line? Oh, is there a line, or is it all in our heads?
A lot of it's in our heads.
That's a good
Uh,
question. I struggle with that all the time.
The people that are watching, can you please share? Like,
yeah, in the
Yeah.
comments. And then I had like a note here. I remember when I was doing, like, while healing, it's okay to big ups yourself. So like, especially like when if you suffer from low self esteem or imposter syndrome, like tell you. So by one of my philosophies that I feel like I use is like, it's know that you are the ish, but also know that you ain't ish. Like that's a way to balance it on the grand
That's
scheme of things.
clear.
So like as in like, yeah, you hot stuff, you do things, but you're not better than anybody. So you personally are great, but you're not better than anybody.
That comparison piece that we touched on initially,
Hmm.
but where that comes in, yeah, for everybody who's watching and listening, can you please contribute to this question? um oh, Beck said the why you're sharing.
oh, intention behind
That's
it.
because I want to
Intention. It
feel
always
like
goes back to, yeah.
I
Yeah.
am the ish, right?
Yeah, exactly. You are. That's okay to say.
But if
I
that's the
guess you can
why, is
say
that
it
good enough or is
to.
that bragging?
No, it just is. I am the ish, which you are.
I guess the intention would be behind it. If like you're saying it to make somebody else feel less than, then
Yeah,
don't say it.
because they're also
But
the ish. Like,
yeah,
But and with that though, there's always that piece of interpretation, right? So I don't know how you're going to
that's
take
true.
that. And I think we had this conversation too, where a friend of yours had lost their job, and they pick up their friend, and who's like, "Guess what? I got this raise, and I did this, and I did this," and they didn't know what the other person was going through, and they're
hmm.
just
Oh yeah.
sharing their accomplishment, but the other person's like, "Wow, okay, good for you. What a jerk." Um, so sometimes maybe when we're sharing what we've accomplished, how others take that usually takes precedence over why we're sharing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Or in who you're sharing it with. What's the purpose for that?
Yeah, I like Eric just had a great comment. He says, "Why do I want to say or talk about it?" I ask myself, "Why do I want to say this or talk about it?"
And sometimes it's just sharing. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
sometimes
so
it's just
happy.
sharing. Like, yeah, like you could say, when people come to you like, oh, over the weekend I was in Italy and I da 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 da. They're just talking,
Yeah.
but then depending on where you're at in your life, you might be like, did
Wow.
they really have dimensions or in Italy? Like, you know what
But
I mean?
then, so there, then I feel like
So,
we can't let people's how they're gonna perceive it. If your intention isn't to do that, you can't let that stop you from sharing your joy. Like you can't let people's perceived sadness or whatever like stop you from being you, right?
from being great,
From
right?
being great. Like they don't just because, yeah,
Yeah, I
savvy.
see Robin's comment here. It says, I think it's a matter of acknowledging that you may have done
Mm,
something well, but recognizing that isn't true. It's just that what you did or what you do was good.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Just like if you make a mistake, you or fail, you're not a failure. When you do great, that doesn't mean you're greatness. Like separate that all the time. You're you with or without the accomplishment.
Yes.
And
Exactly that. You nailed it.
Okay.
It's that I guess back
uh
to
no.
what?
What
There
just
are
So
happened?
you're
comments.
not the ish. What you've accomplished is the ish. And
Mm,
Okay.
so not seeing yourself in the lens of what you do, what roles you play. Those are all different things that contribute to who you are. I mean, not who you are, but it's just things you do. Um, and also,
mm,
yeah, knowing your tribe for sure.
yeah.
That's
And
true.
not everybody's always going to be happy with you. Um, and so,
Oh, for you.
or for you,
Hmm.
and we should do a better job with that. But yeah, so I think that that is very important. Who are you sharing with and why? And then for yourself, knowing that, and that's what gets a lot of people in trouble when they think their accomplishments define their person who they are.
Hmm.
They lose that, they lose themselves.
That's true.
And they don't know where to go from there. So you have to keep building yourself up outside of what you have or don't
That's
have.
true.
That attachment piece to things and thoughts and body and all of that, that Eckhart Tolle again talks a lot about. When you attach
Ego.
ego, there it is, your sense of self to be part of the things you do or how
Yeah.
you look, how you talk,
Or
all of
anything external is will eventually cause unhappiness if that's
yeah,
where you get your sense of self and
Yeah.
self worth.
because it all seizes. There you go. Answered your own question. Perfect.
No, it was a conversation.
I think for me, my biggest answer to your initial question, my biggest thing that I had to unlearn, and I still work on every single day, is being able to acknowledge greatness in others without questioning my greatness.
Mm, bingo.
That's what was hard, because like, when you see somebody that's doing better than you, or excelling in a certain area that you want to excel in, then you're like, dang, what am I doing with my life? We like to say that a lot when you see somebody that's your age and that's killing it, and you're like, dang, what have I done on this earth? And it's like, no, 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 that person is doing great, but you're also doing great
Period.
where you're at, period. Yeah. I think that's been the
Oh,
biggest
that's
thing that I've
good.
had to work on.
So
Yeah.
comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. And that goes both ways, right? We're always comparing ourselves to the next person. In
Mm-hmm.
our cultures, we grow up, the Rwandan community. Hello,
Mm.
if you're listening. Um,
Did you see what their son is doing?
we
Yeah,
grow up
parents.
literally, they don't even downplay it within your sibling group, across, neighbors, people you don't even know who they are.
Cousins.
Do you know
Yeah,
so and so just graduated straight
just
in from the
graduated.
Cool.
and
They graduated last year. Now they're getting married. Oh, that's nice. That's
yeah,
great. I'm happy for
and now they
them.
have kids, and that okay, that's wonderful. I'm happy for them. And then, in
But
addition
it's
to
like they
that,
pause when they say it. So and so just graduated, waiting for your reaction.
I mean,
You're like, you're like, oh, okay, that's great.
great, yes. So there's that where you grow up in families that compare. Parents don't ever compare kids to one another. Oh, so and so was potty trained at 3. What are you doing with your life? You're 2.5 now. Come on.
still peeing yourselves? Are you a baby?
Yes. So then that message is already there. And that's how we have to unlearn comparing our accomplishments with others, or instead of celebrating them and that's enough, we want to celebrate and either
Mm,
say, oh, what, oh, I've done this and this too. I've seen people who do that, like,
Mm-hmm.
congratulations, I just graduated too. That addition of two is always
Yeah.
problematic.
that's
Anytime
true. Yeah.
you want to add your piece to any conversation where somebody's sharing their what they just achieved, I think that's what we need to become more aware of.
Check yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Check ourselves, and we all do it. And so now it's a matter of awareness, and just don't verbalize it. Just congrats, period, done.
Yep.
I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't know what's the big one of the biggest prize in the world. This is not your moment. If the other person just got, I don't know what. I'm not coming up with great examples right now, so I'm not going to try. But
No,
that's
that's
their
fine.
moment, and that's it.
It's a
So that's
Mm-hmm.
huge moment.
great. Agape, did you have an unlearning moment?
Yeah.
And
So
anybody in the
limiting
chat room,
beliefs.
I'm sorry, people in the chat room, if you have any unlearning moment around imposter syndrome, please do drop some over there so we can see what you all are dealing with, or learning or unlearning. Yeah, go ahead, Agape.
I think limiting beliefs, because like we were saying, it's our unconscious beliefs are about ourselves. Like, how do we unlearn those limiting beliefs?
Say
Am
more.
I asking? Am I asking a question? Or am I answering
You're answering a question.
a question?
You can do both.
Sorry, I'm used to podcasting. This is a different format.
You can do both.
No, yeah. So like the thing that we need to unlearn is the limiting beliefs, and then as a expert, what are ways we could do that? That is my question back to you.
Oh, I see what you did there. Limiting beliefs. What do we do? What
Mhm.
can we do to
Yeah.
unlearn that? I think at the core of any unlearning, first step is always awareness.
Hmm.
Awareness of where you do that, right? So the common saying, you think you can, you're right. You think you can't, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
The power of the mind is the key that, I mean, it's so cliche, but literally what you tell yourself, you do. And so
Mm.
you are the only person standing in your own way. I mean, we hear stories every day. Every person we learn about in history, they failed a million times. Starting with the lights, starting with every biggest invention, the iPhone, all the things we admire, all the people we look up to. Most of us just focus on the glory and not the story. And nobody has a story that has only success. So everybody, we all just look at, oh, look at them, the millionaires, and they're this and that. And when they tell you that journey, I just got through watching Madam CJ Walker story.
Hmm.
We started door to door, and
That's
most
great.
people are like, oh, now she has a doc. I mean, she's gone, but we're still learning about her today. It's not because she woke up and had a successful product. The reason we learn and hear about these people centuries before they're after they're gone is because of all the things they had to
Perseverance.
overcome,
Perseverance. Yeah.
the perseverance, resilience. So those limiting beliefs are all self-made. You,
Hmm.
they are, some of it is passed down to you culturally. As a black person, you have a whole society living in the US. You have the whole world telling you you're not enough. You have the whole world telling you aren't even fully human. And so
Hmm.
generation after generation, they've had to overcome and unlearn and ignore and fight every
Hmm.
day to not believe that. And so as much as we fight not believing what other people tell us about us, the harder fight is within us, because we listen to our own story. The narratives we make up about ourselves based on what others have told us have much bigger impacts and consequences than stories others tell us about us.
True. And then to also answer my own question, I just realized as you're talking that it's something I use to do that, to challenge my limiting beliefs, to unlearn those. a great tool that I believe in and has worked for me in other various areas is affirmations. Like if there's using those daily, like in the morning, I have a journal where like, depending on what I want to work on about myself that day, like I have an affirmation I write or read on a daily basis that works on that character flaw or thing that I want to work on and do. And there's, it's not just me. It's like a very talked about thing to do, and it's worked for a lot of people. So if you're not confident, if you write in the and you write it from the place of I am, because like I am are the two most powerful words in all of the world, like in all language, because that you are this. So if you feel shy in situations and you write daily or to say to yourself daily, I am confident, and just keep saying that, that's a great tool to do. So to challenge your limiting beliefs, use affirmations.
Yes, you create your reality with words and with
Mm-hmm.
behaviors. So, another thing that you do, that back to that piece of, they say fake it till you make it. I think it comes from that piece of what you express or put out turns,
Mm-hmm.
you bring it internally. And so
Mm-hmm.
some people talk about doing that power pose before doing
Mm-hmm.
something challenging. That really works. Mine is the
Mm-hmm.
Wonder Woman pose. You stand in that. I mean, they've,
Can we see it?
what happened was I'm wearing short shorts. So if I stand up, it's
It's Zoom.
yeah, we don't want to go
The
viral for
Zoom
the wrong
tape.
reasons. But Bailey's, that's the kind of the base of it. You stand up tall, you breathe, and you belong. Then once you have the
Oh,
posture,
breathe and
you have
belong.
the affirmations. I'm here for a reason. I'm enough. I'm eloquent. I'm whatever you need to hear. Same way that I would give you the pep talk. Who's better than yourself, right? You just give yourself the pep talk. And then you step out
Nobody.
in confidence and you internally feel it. It comes out. Um, so yeah, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for being here with us. I look forward to next week. I never know what we're gonna talk about the following week because I just let it come to
You let
me.
it be inspired. You're inspired.
The
Amen.
universe.
What I'm working on that week, that I let in, and then I work with you all. So for next week, we'll see what we're working on. But I look forward to hearing what you're gonna ask for. What are you gonna ask for? And step outside of yourself so we can fail on purpose and fail forward. That way, when it does come, we're not defeated. So you're enough. You belong. Don't ever forget it. And start your affirmations this week. We're gonna jump on Instagram for Q&A because people are complaining that I guess Instagrammers don't like YouTube and YouTubers don't like Instagram. I don't know what to do here. So we're gonna try it both. So on Instagram, people can jump on and ask questions and interact. And so it'll be Q&A, and we're still all three will be there. Thank you all for spending this evening with us. I don't take it for granted. It's COVID. There's a lot to do. Take care of yourself. Stay healthy. Be safe. No, I mean in terms of watching, there's a lot to watch.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
That's my purpose. Oh Jesus. Okay, so note to self, you can have siblings in professional spaces. So I mean there's a lot to watch, and a lot of virtual things. People on computers all day, and you choose to still be here. So I don't take that for granted. I appreciate y'all. See you on Instagram, those who can. Those who can't, I see you next week, 7 p.m. Maybe send me comments of what you would want to talk about on here, and that might inspire more conversation. So, yes, thank you. God bless. Have a good night. Thanks, Judy and Agape. Tune in
Thank you
to
for having us.
IPU. They have great discussions. And the most recent one, yeah,
Yeah.
tell them about it real quick. Your recent guest. It was really fun. Confidence.
Oh, Confidence. He was also in Little America, and he's actually being nominated for an Emmy. So,
Oh,
yeah.
we got Emmy speakers on our show, y'all.
Hey.
Follow us on Instagram, IPU Podcast, and tune in. Whenever you're washing dishes, driving, doing something, find us and listen to us. We're pretty entertaining.
As you can see.
If I'm not saying something. I'm kidding. Joking. No, I'm not actually. We're
Yeah,
entertaining.
own it.
Yes.
They're doing great things. I was trying to remember what Robin said earlier. Oh, you're not
We're
the
doing
ish.
great
But
things
what you've
outside of
accomplished
ourselves.
is the ish.
Our ish is great,
IPU
but
is the
we.
ish. Everybody find it, subscribe, listen, give them ideas on who to interview, and let's keep supporting each other and doing the work so we can heal, and the rest don't
Awesome.
have to heal from our stuff. Thank you all.
Thank you
Good
so much.
night.
See you,
Thank you for the wonderful
Anita.
comments too. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, guys and ladies.